Okay, so it's 6 sharp, guys. We can start. So, firstly, since it's Wednesday, it's a class for standard 12, right? So, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to your own channel, which is Scholars. I'm hoping everybody is doing well. And yeah, so without any further ado, we can start because we have a lot to cover today. Basically, we're in the revision series, right? So, since one shot revisions are not finishing in time, like we're not able to dedicate a whole chapter to one class, so I thought like revisions based on 2 or 3 parts will be more effective, right? So we're following that series as of now. So this class is a part of that series. We're dealing with chapter 2. We've already done one part of it on Monday. Today is the second part of chapter 2, right? It's revision. Cool. So, a couple of you are already here. Good evening to everybody who is here. I'm hoping others will join in the next couple of minutes. But in the meanwhile, I'll quickly do the introductions. Anyways, as most of you all know, my name is Nikitha and I'm the history educator here at Unacademy Scholars channel. I take classes for both standard 11th and 12th. And a little bit about my educational qualifications. I have recently graduated from Ashoka University with a bachelor's degree where I've done my major in history and a minor in political science. So that's a bit of my background. Quickly moving on to Unacademy's plus features, you can actually sit at your own houses, like comfort of your own houses, and learn live from some of the top educators in India, and you have unlimited access to all of these courses. And then there are regular doubt clearing sessions, answer writing sessions, practice tests and live test series. There's exhaustive coverage of syllabus. There's mentorship provided to you. There is guidance provided to you along with access to study materials, which are usually in the form of PDF. Again, very highly helpful, especially during the revision times. So as far as the pricing is concerned for Plus, the prices you can see on the left side of the screen are the actual prices, right? Like these ones. But you can use a code which is TUM10 and then you'll be able to get a 10% off on these subscriptions, right? So the prices on the right side of the screen are the post discounted prices. So again, there are range of subscriptions, right? Starting from 6 months to almost 2 years. So choose whichever one you want to and you can go ahead with that. So the thing about Iconic, here the features are even better and greater. So there will be personal mentorship provided to you. There are live doubt solving sessions. There are weekly reports. Along with that, there's also a direct parent connect and study planners are also available. So those are a couple of features. So when it comes to Iconic pricing, we have a lot more durations here in the sense that it starts from 3 months and almost stretches till 48 months, right? So the same thing, the prices on the left side of the screen are pre-discounted. After you use the code, which is TUM10, you will be able to subscribe them to the prices on the right side of the screen, right? So that's a little bit about the pricing. So quickly moving on to another Unacademy special feature called as Bugs Bounty. It's basically an opportunity for you learners out there to report any sort of inappropriate content which you find in the video, and you can even claim your prize if you're the first one to report that particular issue. And there's a link or a form in the description below of this video. You can use that form to report your content, any inappropriate content. And lastly, there's something called Emerge. So it's basically a test conducted by Unacademy every week. The format of the test is as such that these are aligned with the latest CBSE guidelines. So it'll act as some sort of practice for your term 1 boards. So I highly recommend to go enroll for it. The link is in the description below of the video. You can go check that out and enroll yourselves and take part in the MCQ based quizzes, right? So that's a little bit of pitch we had for today. Without any further delay, I think we can start. Okay, Vivek is here. Hi Vivek, good evening. Cool. Good evening, everybody else who just joined. Namit is back. Hi, Namit. Happy Choti Diwali. Thank you, Namit. Same to you. Okay. Cool. So, anyways, I'll just dive straight into the topic. Also, guys, since it's a revision session, if you feel that I am going a little bit faster because it's a revision, y'all can at any point of time stop me and ask me to explain it in detail, right? So you'll have that agency to just stop me whenever you feel we're going at a faster pace. Yeah? Okay, so the first three sub-themes of the chapter we've discussed in the Monday's class. So now we'll be talking about another couple of sub-themes, right? So the first one of them is, yes, Namit, it's the standard 12th ka lecture because it's a Wednesday. If you want, you can stay. Otherwise, just feel free to leave. Yeah. So, yeah, what was I saying? New notions of kingship, right? So this is the next sub-theme in your textbook. So, kings have always been there for a really, really long time, right? So, what is that change or what is that difference in the form of kingship from this particular period, right? So, we'll look at some of those features. So, under that, the first thing we have is chiefs and kings in the south. So, majorly we'll be focusing on the southern part of the Indian subcontinent in the next couple of slides. And if you like think of south or like anything below the Deccan region, in this period, the first three kingdoms which have to come to your mind, like or which have to strike your mind, are Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas. Right? The spellings for each of them are here. Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas. Right? So again, roughly to give you an idea as to where did they exactly rule. So just imagine the Indian political figure map in your head right now. So Cholas roughly ruled the northern Tamil Nadu region, right? Pandyas ruled the southern Tamil Nadu region, whereas Cheras were in charge of the Kerala region, right? But back in those days, all of these Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, all of these were together called as the Tamilakam, right? The spelling is here. It's Tamilakam, right? So the whole of the landmass is together called as Tamilakam, right? So within this Tamilakam land, these three kingdoms used to rule, right? Which are Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas. Yeah, and in fact they were very, very powerful kingdoms. Like they were very stable, they were economically progressing. Yeah, all of this prosperity in terms of trade and agriculture, right? So they were like stable enough, they were going good. Yeah, and how do we get to like know information about them, right? The sources are very, very important here. So unlike the Sanskrit text and all, because Sanskrit is not spoken in the south, the major source for us are the Tamil Sangam texts, right? Again, what are these Tamil Sangam texts? Again, in the Tamil region, which is called the Tamilakam land, these Sangam texts are very, very crucial, right? There are so many, these are not just written by one person or two persons. There are n number of authors like Alvars, Nainars, not even them, like even before them, there are so many authors who wrote something which they felt like, right? And if it is important enough, later all of those important works were compiled into what is today called as the Sangam texts, right? Very, very important. They give us a lot of information about the southern part of the Indian subcontinent, right? So they are the major source for us. Guys, any questions at any point of time, please just stop me and ask. Ronak is back. Hi, Ronak. Okay, you just hang on to that question, but like, there's nothing I could do about it, Ronak. Anyways, I'll quickly move on to the next slide. Okay, so we'll be coming across two new terms in this chapter, right? Which are chiefs and chiefdoms, right? So just like how a king is the head of a kingdom, the chief is also the head of a chiefdom, right? But what is the difference between king and chief? We'll look at that in this particular slide. Yeah, they are also like rulers, right? They are also powerful men who are in charge of who are responsible for taking care of a particular territory. The structure is the same between the kings and chiefs, but what are the differences? Yeah, so a chief is essentially someone who is a powerful man, right? And but one thing here is the position of a chief might or might not be hereditary. That's number one difference, which is in case of chiefs, it might or might not be hereditary, but when it comes to kings, the position of the king is always hereditary. The elder son is the person who is going to inherit the kingdom after the father's death, right? But in the case of chiefdoms, that's not the case. Yeah, but he derives support from his kinfolk, right? Kinfolk is nothing but the family, and like he also like performs regular functions like rituals. He has that kind of leadership in warfare. He also like he solves all of these arbitrary disputes, right? Some similar features like the king, like basically he's the head of a certain territory. Yeah, so okay, now we'll move on to the next difference. So on one side, kings basically collect taxes, right, from all of the people living under his territory who are his subjects. King basically collects taxes from all of them, right? But on the other hand, chiefs do not collect taxes. Yeah, they are not responsible for collecting the taxes. But where will they get the money? Yeah, money is also important, wealth is important, right? So he has a group of supporters who are his loyal people, and he also has a couple of subordinates under him, right? So these subordinates and these supporters, they voluntarily give gifts to the chiefs, right? And that itself is a source of income or source of wealth for the chief, right? But like officially, like professionally, he doesn't collect any form of taxes. Yeah, so that's the second difference between chiefs and kings. And lastly, another difference is there are no regular armies or officials under the chiefdoms, but on the other side, kings definitely do maintain armies, because whenever they have to go to a war, armies are very, very essential, right? So that's the third difference. Again, to sum up what are these three differences are, the first one is chief's position is not hereditary, king's position is hereditary. The second difference, chiefs do not collect taxes, kings collect taxes. And the last difference is chiefs do not have armies, whereas kings maintain armies, right? So these are roughly the three differences between chiefs and kings. Again, very, very important, guys. So just make a note of all of these. Okay. Any questions in relation to the differences or similarities between kings and chiefs? Just put them down in the chat box. If there are none, then we can go ahead. Okay, I don't see any. I think I'll move ahead. Cool. So, apart from Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas, who are important in the southern part of the Indian subcontinent, there are other kingdoms as well, other dynasties as well, who were very powerful. Yeah, not just in South India, but also like in the entire part of Indian subcontinent during that time. Yeah, the first one of them is Shatavahanas, right? Very, very powerful. If I'm not wrong, I think almost 30 different rulers were a part of the Shatavahana dynasty, right? 30 rulers from the same dynasty is a lot. Yeah, so that's how powerful Shatavahanas are, and they basically ruled over parts of western and central India, right? From 2nd century BCE to 2nd century CE, almost for a reign of 4 centuries, right? they are Shatavahanas. We'll read about them at some point, probably in the 3rd chapter in detail. But for now, just remember their name. Yeah. So the next important kingdom is Shakas, right? Shakas are also very, very powerful, but Shakas were not of Indian origin, right? They are some Central Asian people, Central Asian descent. They came and occupied the northwestern and western parts of the Indian subcontinent, right? So what is significant about Shatavahanas and Shakas? They are powerful. That is one similarity. But another similarity is both of them derived their revenues or sources of income from long distance trade. Again, very crucial. Yeah, long distance trade was so much thriving in these dynasties, in these kingdoms, that their major source of income was from long distance trade. Right? So that is those are other two important kingdoms. Yeah. Okay. Smita is here. Hi Smita, good evening. Happy Choti Diwali. Thank you Smita. Wish you the same. Okay. Where were we? We were talking about the long distance trade, right? So the next point of the slide talks about the social origins of different dynasties, right? So basically what used to happen is, according to the fourfold Varna structure, like going back to the Varna structure, right? So only like Kshatriyas were supposed to be the kings, like thematically or on paper, according to the system, only Kshatriyas are supposed to be the rulers, right? But sometimes what used to happen is Vaishyas or Brahmins or Shudras, even they were powerful enough to establish their own kingdoms, right? For example, Shatavahanas, right? They are definitely not Kshatriyas. According to some sources, Shatavahanas basically belong to the Shudra community, like Shudra's caste, right? But nonetheless, they were very powerful rulers, right? So sometimes their social origins are very, very like not clear. They're very obscure, right? So that is why they've always tried to claim social status in a variety of ways, so that people will accept them wholeheartedly. Yeah. See, I am the king. I can rule over as many people as I want, for example. But if I'm a Shudra and if people are not willing to accept me as their ruler, then it's not that good, right? So in order to win over the people, in order to convince people, yeah, they different dynasties often resorted to different social statuses. They claimed social statuses in a variety of ways, right? So we look at a few of one of them in detail in the next slide, right? Again, this whatever we're going to talk about right now is important. It's called the divine kings, right? So please pay attention. If you all don't understand at any point of time, just put in the chat box. Yeah. So cool. Regarding the divine kings, right? It's also called as the divine kingship theory. As you go ahead, probably in your undergraduate level or something, you learn about these theories, right? But for now, just call them as the divine kings, right? So what does this mean? So for example, okay, we'll look at the example later, but like what are divine kings? It's basically a particular king identifying himself with a deity, right? Let's say I'm there. Uh, I am probably from a Shudra caste or a Vaishya caste, whatever. I do not have a certain social status in the society, right? Then what will I do? I will compare myself with God, or I will identify myself with God, because people can't go against the God, right? People are religious. They want to respect God. They want to honor God. So if I myself am the God, then obviously people are going to give respect to me, right? So this is, I don't know, like another way where they associated themselves to a variety of deities. Yeah. So we'll look at one example here, which is that of the Kushanas, right? Kushanas are also not Indians. They do not have an Indian origin. In fact, they have a Central Asian origin, right? So they ruled over the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent from 1st century BCE to 1st century CE, right? Kanishka, right? Like Kanishka is one important ruler of Kushana dynasty. So just remember Kushanas that way. Yeah. So their kingdom like almost extended from Central Asia to Northwest India. So nonetheless, like they were not of Indian origin. That's why they were not able to fit into the Indian society well. But they want to fit into the Indian society, right? So now what did they do? They started making huge sculptures of themselves, like statues of themselves, right? Like life size statues, like 6 feet statues, 5 feet statues, and started involving them, started installing them in the temples, right? Usually, who's there in the temples? Um, Gods are there, right? God sculptures, God statues are there. So, what are these Kushanas were doing were, in order to identify themselves as gods, yeah, they considered themselves godlike, yeah. So they started installing their own statues also just beside the god statues in the temples, right? So we even have evidences right now in the 21st century. One of these colossal statues of Kushana rulers, if you go to Uttar Pradesh, especially the Mathura region, if you visit some of the temples there, you find all of these statues of Kushana rulers. And similar statues are also found in Afghanistan, right? So that kind of associating themselves to God is a feature that Kushanas have followed in order to claim their social status, right? So that's divine kings, right? Like associating themselves to God. Okay, this concept is very, very important again. So in case anybody has any questions, guys, just put them in the chat box. Sonia is back. Hi, Sonia. Good evening, Sonia. I'm doing very good, Sonia. Thanks for asking. How are you? Also, guys, like theory is important. So this thing is important, right? Like divine kings. So just remember it. In case of any questions, let me know. Okay, I think I'll go ahead. Cool. So moving on to the next slide, right? So okay, we're still studying about the Kushana rulers. Kushana rulers, apart from installing their sculptures or statues in the temples, they've also started adopting different titles. Yeah, which, like for example, titles are called as Devaputra. What does that mean? If you translate Devaputra into English, it literally is translated to son of God, right? Which is also divine in nature, which is also prestigious, right? So they've adopted all of these titles, saying we are sons of God and therefore you all should respect us. Yeah, and this concept of adopting titles is probably inspired from the Chinese ruler traditions, right? Because Chinese also at some point of time in history, they started calling themselves as sons of heaven, right? Which is somewhere associated with God. That is the tradition which was borrowed by Kushanas from Chinese rulers. Um, yeah. Okay, Ayushi. Hi, Ayushi. Thanks, Aishi. Wish you the same. In fact, I wish everyone a happy Choti Diwali. No, definitely no, Aishi. Okay, I think I'll go ahead. So that tradition was basically borrowed from the Chinese rulers. So, and like moving on to a couple of centuries ahead, Gupta Empire was there, right? Gupta Empire by almost 4th century CE. We have evidence of all of these larger, like bigger political states where Gupta Empire was the most famous. Yeah. So Gupta Empire is again not a very centralized state. It is a highly decentralized state, which means it depended on other subordinate rulers who are basically called as Samantas. Yeah, back in those times. So Samantas are basically like feudal lords, right? They had so much of resources, they had so many military people, military men under them. So whenever there's a war, these Samantas used to provide soldiers to the king, right? So now you understand the feudal relationship between Samantas and the Guptan rulers, right? So they they also like showed their loyalty and allegiance because king is providing them protection and the power to collect taxes in return, right? So it works both ways. Both of them have to be helpful to each other. Only then the relationship will be established. Otherwise there will be chaos and like conflicts and all. Yeah. So king is providing them the right to collect taxes. Samantas are providing soldiers. It's a equal relationship. Yeah. So these powerful Samantas, right? Like if they are powerful enough that they could dethrone the king, they have enough military to like for themselves to become the king, right? They can do that because they have the power, right? So now what will happen? The king himself will be demoted to the position of a Samanta, right? So it's highly possible that Samantas can become the kings and also can also become the Samantas, right? Depending on how much ever power they have in their hands. Yeah. So that's Samantas and Guptan rulers. We'll talk about Guptas in detail, right? So basically all of these histories of Gupta rulers, just like we're looking at sources for every other kingdom, historians have constructed the history of Guptan empire by studying so much of literature, which are textual sources, right? Then they also studied coins and inscriptions, including prashastis. Prashastis are also some kinds of inscriptions, right? So we'll look at what prashastis are, but like these are some of the sources of sources for historians for studying Gupta Empire, right? Okay, so now what are prashastis? Prashastis are also inscriptions, right? So, but what is the content again? Let's say I'm the king, right? And I have a courtsman or some poet who I am patronizing. I will ask the poet to write something about me, but only positive things, right? Like good traits, no negative traits. He'll write he'll write about me saying like, you know, like X so and so ruler is very powerful, he's ambitious, he's conquered these many states, he has such big armies, like everything positive, right? But sometimes it might not be the actual case. What if I'm not powerful, but I'm asking my poet to just write that I'm powerful? Those kind of situations are also very common, right? So that extra praising of the king, right? They are called as prashastis. They also have another English name which are called as eulogies, right? The spelling is here, guys. These prashasti inscriptions in English are called as eulogy, right? Which are basically written in the praise of the king. Yeah. So in such situations, if I'm reading or if I'm coming across a particular prashasti, and if I'm a historian, let's say, I might not be able to get like factual information because everything is so hyped up in the prashasti, right? So it's always not a good idea to completely rely on prashastis. You always have to corroborate it with another external textual sources, right? Because they're not always true. Yeah. Okay, Mariam has a question. Ma'am, what is Prayaga Prashasti? Thanks, Mariam, for that question. We're just going there, right? So, Prayaga Prashasti, right? Like, again, Prashasti, the point of Prashasti or like the meaning of Prashasti is clear, right? So, Prayaga Prashasti is nothing but the Prashasti installed in the region called as Prayaga. Yeah. So, again, what is this basically? It's a inscription written by Harishena. Who is Harishena? Harishena is the court poet of Samudragupta. Samudragupta is a very famous ruler belonging to the Gupta dynasty, right? Arguably the most powerful of the Gupta rulers, right? So he basically ordered his court poet by name Harishena to compose a prashasti, right? So since it is, after like writing it down, what are prashastis, right? These are inscriptions. So obviously these prashastis might have been written on stone or on copper plates. So once they're written, they need to be installed somewhere. So that was basically installed in a region called as Prayaga. So that is why it is named as Prayaga Prashasti. Yeah, I'm hoping that point is clear, Mariam. It's just the name of the place, right? Okay, so like these Prayaga and all, these are not the names by which we address these cities now. That Prayaga later became Allahabad, right? Just like how Bombay became Mumbai, just like how Madras became Chennai. In the same manner, Prayaga became Allahabad, right? So since this Prashasti is in Allahabad, we even today call it as the Allahabad pillar inscription, right? So which place is Prayaga? Allahabad is called as Prayaga, Mariam. It's Allahabad. Anyways, so that's about the slide, guys. Any questions still here? Any questions, just put them down. Otherwise, we can go ahead. Okay, Mariam says understood. Thanks, Mariam, for responding. Cool. So now I think we can move on to the next sub-theme, which is titled as a change in countryside, right? So what's basically happening in the rural areas? Like countryside is nothing but the rural areas. Yeah, like away from the capital, what's happening? Firstly, under that we'll be talking about the popular perception of kings, right? Like what did people think of the king? Did they like the king? Did they not like the king? Were they respectful enough towards the king? Yeah, like what did basically the common people or like the rural people think of the king? How did they perceive the king, right? So that's the question. Okay, like what did subjects basically think about their rulers? That's the question we'll be answering in this slide and the next slide. Yeah. So obviously, like we do not have much information about what the common people thought, because they never left histories of their own, like they never wrote or they never issued all of these inscriptions. So we do not have like definite information, like more information, but nonetheless historians have put in so much effort, and by studying like various sources they've come across with certain answers, right? So they've often studied sources like Jatakas and Panchatantras, right? These were basic Panchatantras. We all of us know what Panchatantras are because we've read them in our childhood, right? So these are the stories. So these were basically written in this particular time only, the first centuries of the BC period, right? So when these historians have studied Panchatantra and Jatakas in detail, they have come across some answers or some perceptions of the rulers, right? And also like these Panchatantras and Jatakas, they initially were passed down from one generation to the other as oral popular tales. Yeah, they were just like talked, like they were spoken to each other, but they were never in the written format. But after a while, people have translated these into the written format as well, right? They mostly found in Pali language, yeah, and they were composed somewhere around the first millennium CE. Yes, so that's the brief intro to what Jatakas and Panchatantras are. So now we look at what kind of information do these Jatakas provide. Yeah. So we look at one example so that we'll understand how exactly like people perceived the king. This is one instance in particular, right? So if you look at Ganda Tindu Jataka, right? The spelling is here, guys. It's Ganda Tindu Jataka. Yeah. So it talks about one particular king. We don't know the name of the king. It's anonymous, right? But people often described him as the wicked king. Matlab, like cruel king. People did not like him basically. Uh, like irrespective of who it is, like cultivators, herders, village boys, women, men, old people, young people, children, like nobody liked him because he was so cruel. Yeah. So what happened one day, right? Like this particular wicked king, he wanted to know what people are thinking about him, right? He was very curious. So one day he dresses himself up as a common person, like some avatar. Yeah, he's not a king anymore, like, but he dresses himself in some kind of common people attire, and then he starts walking in the village, right? And then he heard people talking about him, and they were basically cursing the king, right? They're blaming that king is bad because king is not taking care of the people properly. He's not looking after the welfare of the people, right? What is their major problem? That all of these tax collectors who are employed by the king, they are harassing these common people during the daytime. Yeah. And not just that, there is so much like problem of robbery during the night. If king is responsible enough, if he is a good king, then he would have taken care of these problems, right? He would have done something to the tax collectors saying, like don't pressurize the common people, or like, like give them time to pay the tax, like some concessions. And he would have also like looked into the problem of the robbery if he's a good king. But he did not do that. And therefore people are pissed off. They do not like the king and they started bitching about the king. Yeah. So that's one perception of the king where basically people did not like the king. Yeah. So that's that. Uh, any questions till here, guys? Dheeraj is here. Hi Dheeraj, good evening. Okay, another account by name Listener is also here. Hi and good evening to whoever this is. Guys, any questions? Okay, I don't think there are any. Then I'll quickly go ahead. So, the situation of the people is basically terrible. They do not like the king because they're being robbed in the night and harassed by the tax collectors in the day. Okay, so now they want to get rid of all this. What is one solution? That king will look into it and set things right. But king is not taking care of it. So what is the only solution that they have? They are running away into the forest. Because in the forest, nobody will ask you to pay the tax. Because you're living somewhere in the outskirts, people usually don't come into the forest and demand tax. Right? And also like robbers and all, usually they don't rob from the houses in the forest, right? So to escape these horrible, terrible situations, the only resort that people had were abandoning their villages, abandoning their own houses, and running away to the forest and living there. Yeah, so that's what people did. Okay, so you've looked at one story, right? It's the story of a wicked king written in one of the Jatakas. It's basically telling us the relationship that the king and his subjects shared, especially the rural population, right? It's not that good. It's often strained. People did not like him, right? So why is this? Because king was very oppressive towards the subjects, right? The only thing he cared about is money. Yeah, even though people did not have enough money to pay the taxes, he harassed them to pay the taxes. He basically oppressed all of these peasants, right? So that's why they did not like. And One option, as I said, is escaping into the forest, which we see in one of these Jataka stories. But everybody just can't go and live in the forest, right? Some people want to live in the village because then there are access to markets, or because their family is there, their relatives are living in the village. For some external factors, people don't want to run away to the forest, but instead they want to live in the village itself, right? But they need money to pay the tax if they're living in the village. What will they do? To meet those growing demands for taxes, one strategy that they adopted is increasing agricultural production, right? How did they increase it? What ways did they adopt? We'll look at it in the next slide. Yeah. Okay. uh, okay, an account of listener says, I'm sorry if I misunderstood this, whoever's asking this, but like I'm very bad at Hindi. So probably you're going to ask me something related to business, right? Because you're from PCM background. Is that what you meant? I mean, I'm bad at it, but if you want to, then I can probably give it a shot. You can. We just type down whatever your question is. Probably according to that, I'll see. Yeah. Um, cool. We will be basically talking about how people adopted different strategies to increase their agricultural production. Right? Okay, what are these strategies? Right? So, one very worked out strategy, which was very, very important, was shift to plow agriculture. Right? Again, like before this, normally like seeds were sown, like randomly they were dispersed. It did not have much effect, but once people shifted to plow agriculture, which means that after every crop they are plowing the field, they are tilling the soil, right? By plowing and tilling, what will happen is the nutrients of the soil are restored, which means there will be greater agricultural productivity, right? So that strategy was adopted especially near the fertile alluvial river valleys. For example, the region surrounding Ganga river and Kaveri river, right, from 6th century BCE. So that is one strategy, which is shifting to plow agriculture. It did in fact yield better results. Yeah, there was greater production, right? Uh, yeah, Mariam, you're absolutely right. Transplantation is also another method. We'll look at what transplantation is in the next slide, right? So we'll go one by one, but it's absolutely right, Mariam. Um, yeah, so one thing is plow agriculture, right? So what happened, right? Like these plows are basically not made up of wood anymore because wood is not that effective, but in fact they are made up of iron. They have a iron tip, right? It's very easy to turn the soil right now. Yeah, and obviously there was high rainfall in these regions. So high rainfall coupled with good plowing obviously results in greater productivity. Yeah. So, and yeah, there are evidence surrounding the Ganga Valley that production of paddy dramatically increased, right, by introduction of the transplantation. The same point that Mariam just mentioned, right, regarding transplantation. Uh, I mean, there are advantages, there are disadvantages of this process. First, we look at the advantage and like how it is done, right? So, transplantation is basically, let's say I'm a farmer and I am sowing the seed. Yeah, I've sowed the seed and it just grew a little. Like there's a small plant or a small sapling in front of me, right? So, now what will I do is pluck the root of that sapling, right, and plant it in some other field where there is excess water, because paddy usually requires a lot of water to grow. Yeah, so that is the advantage, because by doing this you'll obviously have enough productivity, like greater productivity. But what is the disadvantage is it involves a lot and lot of work from the peasant or the farmer, because he's doing the double work right now. After the sapling is grown, he's picking it, he's going to another field, then he is carefully putting it in that field again. It's back-breaking work. Yeah. So people, whoever can do it, they did it, and it often yielded great results. Yeah. So this use of iron, like plow agriculture, right? Like it was famous. Yeah. Many people in fact adopted it, but it was mainly restricted to the Ganga and Kaveri river valleys. But what about people in other parts of the subcontinent? Right? Did they also adopt plow agriculture or did they not? We'll look at it in the next slide. Yeah. Before going ahead, Mariam has a point. Ma'am, timeline of the chapter in the end. I mean important dates. Yes, Mariam, we could do that. I think to a certain extent they are important, but to a certain extent they are not. So probably we'll just look at the dates which are important to us. Yeah, we can, like, towards the end of the chapter, we can definitely do this, Mariam. Thanks for the suggestion, by the way. Cool. So, which regions adopted plow agriculture and which regions did not? That's the important question. So, cultivators in areas, yeah, which are basically semi-arid, such as Punjab and Rajasthan. These areas till 20th century, which is almost like a few years back, till the 20th century, they never adopted plow agriculture, right? And even people living in the hilly tracts of northeastern states like Assam, Meghalaya, Manipur, all of these people also did not adopt plow agriculture, but instead they practiced hoe agriculture, right? I mean, it also depends on the geographical location, right? Like usually there are hilly territories in northeastern states. The terrain is as such that it's not suited for plow agriculture. So like different factors. Because of all of these external factors, people did not adopt plow agriculture everywhere. Yeah. So that's about the plow agriculture and transplantation. The next strategy that was adopted to increase agricultural production was definitely the use of irrigation, right? Irrigation is nothing but the supply of water to these agricultural crops. Yeah. So this irrigation was done through so many means. Water from wells and tanks. They were often drawn and then used to and then supplied to the crops, right? That was there. But canals were also used, but they were very rare. They were not that common, right? So through different means, farmers have resorted to irrigation processes as well, which are very, very important for agricultural productivity. Yeah, because only when you have enough water, you will have good productivity, right? So communities as well as individuals organize the construction of irrigation works, right? Everybody installed their own irrigation techniques, right? So the latter, usually powerful men including kings, often recorded such activities in inscriptions. So especially with regards to irrigation facilities, right? For some reason it was treated as some kind of good activity or like a prestigious activity. So if any king is sponsoring these irrigation works, he definitely made sure that all of these good works are inscribed in some of the inscriptions, right? And that is exactly what we called as prashastis. Yeah. So he made it a point to note it down on some of the inscriptions, basically saying good about himself. Yeah, like I am the powerful ruler, I'm a very benevolent ruler, I take care of the people, that is why I've installed all of these irrigation works, something like that. Yeah. Okay. Namit, yes, Namit, I think probably we can do this tomorrow because we have a class for 11th standard people tomorrow, right? So we can talk about this when your class is going on, if that's okay. Yeah. or if it's important and like the deadline is due tomorrow or day after, just stay back after the class, like probably after 7, right? Then we can talk about it, Namit. Okay, got it, listener. Thanks for clarifying. Also, like, I'm very bad at Hindi, so like if y'all have any comments or suggestions to make, please make them in English, guys. Um, Anyways, where were we? We've done with the slide. Okay, so the guys, any questions still here? Because we've almost done with like one sub theme. We'll be moving on to the next. But in case y'all have questions before that, then we can solve that first. Okay, I don't see any. Then I'll go ahead. So the next thing is differences in rural society, right? Like, were everybody equal, or were the society not equal? Were there any differences, or how did like people treat each other? Yeah, these are some of the topics we'll be dealing with. Basically, the societal values. Yeah. So all of these like agricultural technologies, right? Like introduction of transplantation, introduction of plow agriculture, irrigation facilities. These are all considered as agricultural technologies. Yes. One thing they did is a good thing, which increase in production, right? But that doesn't mean everybody benefited properly from these technologies. In fact, no, that's not the case. Only like some sections of the population benefited from these technologies, other people did not, right? So, based on that, there was a differentiation in the society, right? So, and that's clearly evident that there is a growing differentiation amongst the people engaged in agriculture. If you look at the Buddhist tradition texts like Jatakas and Tripitakas and all, you'll come across this evidence, right? That all of the people are not the same in the society. In fact, there are different categories of peasants, different categories of rural people, right? So to categorize them, there are three, right? Like three major categories. First one is the landless agricultural laborers, right? So these are agricultural laborers who just used to work on other people's land and they did not have any land of their own. Yeah. The next one is small peasants, right? Small peasants are again who used to have only 1 or 2 hectares under their control, subsistently enough. They used to just work on their farm, which was enough for their own family, but there was no surplus, right? But on the other side, you have all of these large landholders who used to have so much of land under their control. They're very wealthy, very rich, right? There was so much surplus which they used to sell in the markets and gain money. Yeah. So these are the three differences between the rural populations back in those days, which are evident from the Buddhist texts, right? So there's a particular term called Gahapati, which was used in the Pali text to designate the second and third categories, right, which are small peasants and large landholders, right? So also the large landholders as well as the village headmen, they emerged as very powerful figures, obviously because they had so much money. There's in history, just remember one thing: if you all have so much money, you will be basically powerful and you will be able to exercise your dominance over other people, right? In the same manner, village headman, large landholders, they had so much of money and therefore they were able to exercise control over all of these petty peasants or like small cultivators. Yeah. So these are some of the differences. Uh, Namit says the deadline is 6th of November. I think, Namit, it's good enough that you stay back today after the class, because I just remembered tomorrow we don't have a class because of Diwali, right? So the next we are going to meet is only on 6th of November. So if you want to, just stay back after this class, right? We can discuss this after this class. If that's okay with you, Namit. Anyways, we'll quickly talk about the three differences in the society, right? Apart from the Buddhist texts which talk about the differences in the society, there are also some parts of Tamil literature, right, which is the Sangam text, right? They also mention different categories of people living in the villages. They have their own names which are usually in Tamil, right? The same categories, they are the same categories like large landowners, small peasants, and agricultural laborers. So these large landowners were called as Vellalar in Tamil. Plowmen or small peasants were called as Ujavar. And these slaves, or who are also called as agricultural laborers, they're called as Adimai. Yeah. So Vellalar, Ujavar, and Adimai are three category of people mentioned in the Tamil text, also called as Sangam text. Yeah. So again, like on what basis were they differentiated? Number one is access to land, right? One category had no land at all, one category had some land, the other category had so much of land, right? So depending on their access to land, depending on the labor and also the different technologies available to them, these classifications were made, right? So like all of these, there were legal documents, all of these transactions, right? Whenever somebody used to sell a plot of land, just like how we have legal documents today regarding the control over land, the same thing existed back in those days as well. Yeah. So lastly, I think we have one point which is the Gahapati, right? We've come across this word in the last slide, but we'll just see what a Gahapati or who a Gahapati is, right? So a Gahapati is basically a owner, master of head of a household who basically exercised his control over other people living in the same residence. Yeah, basically the head of the family. Yeah, whatever resources they had in terms of land or in terms of cattle or any other things, he was the owner of all these resources, right? It often, this word Gahapati was often used to mark the status of the women, status of the men, sorry, belonging to the urban elite, right? So these are some of the features of who a Gahapati is. Major point is he's the head of the family, and whatever resources are there, he is the owner of all of these resources, right? So that's Gahapati. Okay, I think it's almost time, but just give me like 5-10 minutes. I'll wind this up. Yeah. So the last sub theme we'll be talking about in today's class is land grants and new rural elites, right? So land grants, what do you mean by that? Somebody who has so much of land is giving a piece of that land to somebody else. That you're granting that land to somebody, right? So these type of land grants were there right from the early centuries of Common Era, right? When we have seen so many of them recorded in the inscriptions, right? So these inscriptions were basically made up of stone, or sometimes they were also made up of copper plates, right? So whenever these transactions used to happen, or whenever somebody used to give a piece of land to the other person, they used to record it down. Yeah, and they are still available. They are the sources for historians, right? So the records that have survived are generally about grants to religious institutions or to Brahmins. Again, like if I'm the king, let's say, or if I'm a very wealthy person, I have so much of land under me, like I'm the owner of so much land. Why will I give it to somebody who is poor, or why will I give it to somebody who is a slave? There's no benefit I'm getting in return, right? But let's say I am giving a piece of my land, or I'm donating this particular land grant to a religious institution or a Brahmin. I'll have a good name in the society because I'm giving something to the temple, which is a good thing, which is a blessing. Yeah. So that is why always most of the land grants were made in the name of religious institutions or Brahmins, which is considered as a good thing in the society. Right. So whenever these transactions were done, they were noted down, they were recorded in the form of inscriptions, which were usually in Sanskrit. But once we cut down to the 7th century, these inscriptions were no more in Sanskrit. Instead, local languages such as Tamil and Telugu were widely used to record these transactions. Right? So we'll look at one particular inscription which talks about a land grant in more detail, so that we'll get to know like basic information. Right? So this land grant was basically made by Prabhavati Gupta. Again, who is Prabhavati Gupta? She is the daughter of the Guptan ruler Chandragupta II. Yeah, Chandragupta II is again very famous. Chandragupta II is actually the son of Samudragupta. Right? Prabhavati Gupta is the daughter of Chandragupta. So, Prabhavati Gupta, she's a very powerful queen. Yeah. So she was married into another important ruling family called as Vakatakas. Vakatakas is also another important dynasty ruling in the Deccan. So Prabhavati Gupta actually got married to one of the Vakataka rulers, right? That's again a little bit about her. But when it comes to land grant made by Prabhavati Gupta, right? Like according to the conventional notion or according to the Sanskrit legal text, women are not supposed to be the owners of the land. They just can't own a piece of land, or they are not independent. They do not have any independent access to resources, right? But clearly Prabhavati Gupta did have land under her control, and in fact she granted these land to somebody. What does this mean? I don't know, like according to the legal text, your women are not supposed to hold any land. But Prabhavati Gupta is doing exactly the opposite of it. Yeah. Either it can be two of these cases. Number one, the reason she is having land is because these legal texts did not matter in the society. Like people did not care about these legal Sanskrit texts. That can be number one. Or another explanation can be because she's a king, because she's a royal member, because she's a queen, there's an exception for her because obviously high status in the society, she's a royal woman, right? So it can be either because she's a exceptional case or people did not care much about these Sanskrit texts. Whatever the situation is, at the end of the day, she did in fact have a lot of resources under her control, a lot of land under her control, which then she granted to somebody else, right? So that way she did, right? So all of this was recorded in one of the inscriptions. Yeah. Yes, Mariam, absolutely right. Like she donated the land, right? She donated the land. So the inscription which talks about Prabhavati Gupta's land grant, yeah, what is it telling us? It's giving us basic information about the rural populations, right? It's saying that, you know, like so and so people resided in a village, Brahmins were there, peasants were there, you know, like some other people were there. Like when the inscriptions are recorded, right, the name of the donor, the name of the donee, what is the occupation of the donee, you know, like which year was it granted, like so much extra information was also recorded on the inscription. That is why if you read these, we'll get so much other information as well about the rural populations, right? So that way it's also important source. And according to the inscription, right, like whatever Prabhavati Gupta made a grant, people of the village are supposed to obey the new lord of the village, right? And whatever taxes are supposed to be collected, this particular donee is responsible for collecting the taxes, right? And not just this is just one example, but land grants of this kind are available in different parts of the Indian subcontinent. It's a very common phenomena, right? there's no like particular restriction as to you're supposed to give only these many acres of land, nothing like that. You can give a very small piece of land, but on the other side you can give vast stretches of uncultivated land which are as large as a village sometimes. The whole of the village used to be donated sometimes, right? So there's no restriction as to the size of the land. Okay, Mariam, a donee, it's D-O-N-E-E, right? A donee is nothing but who is receiving that land. Yeah? Now, Prabhavati Gupta here is the donor. But who is she giving it to? Some X person, right? That X person is referred to as the donee. Yeah? I'm hoping that's clear, Mariam. Okay, so again, the impact of land grants subject of heated debate. Like, why did people do these land grants? Why? See, obviously, why would anybody want to lose their resources, right? So it's always a heated debate among historians as to the reasons as to why people actually did these land grants. Yeah. So there are several explanations. There are several debates, right? One of that is there is so much of uncultivated land in the village, right? The ruler wanted to extend the agriculture to these new areas, to these new barren uncultivated lands. So it is some kind of strategy adopted by the rulers so that if somebody is in charge of these lands, they will take care, they will make sure that agriculture happens, which means greater revenue to the state. That's a strategic tactical move by the ruler. Yeah. So another debate or another set of scholars suggests that land grants basically indicated weakening of political power, right? Let's say there is some kind of conflict happening between Samantas and rulers. Yeah, especially in case of Guptans, we've seen that Samantas are very, very powerful, right? So if there is some kind of conflict happening between kings and Samantas, then kings need the support of somebody else to defeat Samantas, right? So by making a donation or a land grant to that somebody else, king is basically becoming friends with that somebody else. So king plus that somebody else together will form an alliance and defeat the Samanta. Right? So what does this mean? It's basically a weakening of political power. Yeah. And lastly, there's another theory as well which says the same thing about political destabilization. The kings are not powerful enough, like in reality, but at least to showcase it to the outside world, just to represent it on paper that they are powerful, they've done these land grants and all, like portraying themselves to be powerful even though they are not. Right? So these are some of the theories. Okay, before going ahead, Mariam has a question as to who were Shatavahanas. Shatavahanas is another dynasty, Mariam, right? Just like how Kushanas are, just like how Cheras, Cholas, Pandyas. In the same manner, Satavahanas are also a dynasty of rulers which ruled over central and western part of India, right? In the first millennium CE, right? They were very, very powerful indeed. So they were Shatavahanas. Okay, last slide. So land grants, if you read all of these inscriptions, they're basically giving us some sort of insight into the relationship between cultivators and the state, right? We're definitely getting to know some information. Yeah, like what kind of relationship did the state have with the cultivator? Was it good? Was it bad? I don't know. If you read the inscriptions, then you'll get to know it, right? So it's good, like it's good to a certain extent that they are providing us some information. But on the flip side, if you look at certain categories of people, for example, pastoralists or like fishermen who relied on fishing, or sometimes hunter-gatherers who moved from one place to another, nomadic people, right, like semi-sedimentary artisans and shifting cultivators. All of these people, they did not settle in a particular place. These are people who used to roam from one place to another in search of livelihood. In these cases, we do not have information about them because they did not leave any accounts or they did not write any detailed records of how their lives were. Were there any transactions happening amongst them? How did they lead their life? What did they eat? Where did they go? What kind of occupation they had? No, we do not have any information about them, right? So what do we see here? We are only talking about certain sections of the population because we have sources about them, we have information about them. But this is not the complete picture. We still have certain populations, certain communities which we do not have information about, right? So yeah, and lastly, first millennium is not equal to 100 BC, Mariam. So millennium is 1000 years, right? Let's say starting from year 1, like first year of CE to 1000 year of CE, that whole 1000 years is together called a millennium, right? A set of 1000 years is called a millennium. So when I say first millennium, I'm talking about the first year till the 1000 year CE, right? A decade is 10 years, right? A century is 100 years. In the same manner, millennium is 1000 years. Yeah, I'm hoping that's clear, Mariam. Okay, so last point for today's class, who are Agraharas? So, or like what is an Agrahara basically? An Agrahara was a land granted to a Brahmin. So in the same land grants topic that we are dealing with, in case if a land grant is done to a Brahmin, then that particular land was called as an Agrahara land. And it's different or it's beneficial to the Brahmin because Brahmin did not have to pay any sort of taxes or any sort of revenue to the state because they are Brahmins, because they are highly respected in the society, right? So they can be exempted from paying any sort of taxes, right? So that in that scenario, Agraharas had an upper hand. Okay, so that's it basically we have for today's class. I think we covered like the 4th and 5th sub-themes of the textbook. Any questions, please let me know in the chat box, guys. Since it's the revision, we're covering a lot of content because we've already done this. We've already had a lot of quizzes on this chapter, right? So that's why we're moving a little bit faster and also covering a lot of content, right? But if you don't think this is working, then we can slow down. Just let me know what works for you. Yeah. Okay. Also, tomorrow is Diwali, so happy Diwali, everyone. Have a safe Diwali, right? And stay safe, stay happy. Thanks, Mariam. Wish you the same. Cool. So that brings us to the end of the thing for today, end of today's class. Thanks guys for tuning in. Also, if Namit is still here, Namit, you can start typing a question, like whatever help you need. Within the 2 minutes, I'll try to conclude this. Just type your questions. I'll try to answer them, Namit. Yeah. Okay, Mariam has a request regarding MCQs in the Telegram group. Yes, Mariam, I can do that. Like till now, whatever MCQs we've done, probably I'll send all of those questions on the Telegram group, and whatever I'm going to do in the future also, I'll keep updating on the Telegram group. Yeah, so don't worry about that, Mariam. Okay, I'll try to wind this up because we're already past time. Guys, a little update. There's a crash course actually happening for standard 12 humanities students. It's already started on 1st November. It's already been 3 days, right? The duration is for like 1.5 months, and the medium of instruction or the delivery of instruction is English here. These are all the educators that will be teaching you different subjects. Their bios and names are here. So have a look at that, and if you're interested, go join that crash course. It's really, really helpful. It's highly designed so that you'll be acing your term 1 boards, right? So have a look at that. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. I know it's Choti Diwali, people must be busy with festivities and all, but nonetheless, thanks for tuning. Highly grateful. And also, if you like the content of these videos, please do like it, share it as much as possible, and also subscribe to the channel Unacademy with scholars in particular, right? Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming. I'll see you guys again on Friday, the day after Diwali. Yeah, where we'll be continuing the revision of this chapter, right? I'll see you then. Have a safe Diwali till then. Yeah. Um. Okay. Mm, okay, I don't see any questions from Namit. Namit, are you still here with me? Okay. Happy Diwali, Sita. Uh, okay, I don't know who this UPSC lover is, but guys, the session starts at 6 in the evening, not at 7, right? So 7, some other educator will be taking the classes for other subject, right? But if you're coming here for like what do you say, history, then the sessions usually starts at 6 p.m., right? So make note of the timings, guys. Okay, back to Namit. What exactly was the question, Namit? Like, what presentation is it? Like a PPT? Like, what exactly? Can you tell me like some details of it? Okay, take any chapter from the book. Cool. Yeah, sure, not a problem. But tomorrow we don't have a class. So probably like from day after tomorrow, like make sure you tune in at 6 p.m. Right? Okay. Any chapter from the book for a project work. So does that mean you have to cover the whole chapter, or is it okay if you cover any one particular theme from the chapter? Okay, A4 sheet पर करना है, लेकिन what are we supposed to do? Just give like a summary or talk about any one particular theme or summary of the whole chapter. Yes, UPSC lover, you can ask me something related to the questions. I will definitely answer. 2 to 3 topics. Okay. I don't know if uh, Namit, like, see, if you want to do something based on Mughal, you were talking about the Mughals only, right, in the beginning. So, like, in case if you want to do something related to the Mughals and all, um, I don't know, probably you can do something like Shah Jahan's expeditions. That can be one theme, right? You can talk about Akbar's own religion, right? Again, if you have read something about the Mughals, you will know that Akbar was not basically satisfied with any of the existing religions. Like, he was a Muslim by birth, but he did not want to follow Islam. He did not like Hindus, he did not like Sikhs. So basically, he came up with his own religion called as Din-e-Ilahi, right? So probably like one theme you can explore in your project is that, or you can talk about the building of Taj Mahal or any other important monuments. You can talk about the patronization of Sufi saints by the Mughal rulers, right? So these are some of the topics which you can explore with relation to the Mughals. But like in specific, if you want to talk about anything, then it's your choice. Yeah, like not more than 10 to 12 pages. Yeah, like easily if you want to explore these topics, right? Like Dine Ilahi, construction of monuments, or what else was I telling? The patronizing of Sufi saints, right? So just touch upon these major topics of Mughal thing. You just go like Google it, Wikipedia, some other articles and all. You will definitely get some kind of information. So yeah, like writing 10 to 12 pages is not a huge deal. You will definitely come across material, Namit, so don't worry about that. Just work on it. Yeah, you have like a day or two. If anything is not clear, just come back to me on Thursday's class, right? Thursday we have a Friday's class, right? So if anything is not still clear, then we can discuss it in detail in Friday's class. Yeah, but for now these are my suggestions. Yeah. Okay, coming back to UPSC syllabus question, Manusmriti, Dharma Shastras and Dharma Sutras. Again, just to give you, it's a huge topic to be debated, but just to give you a brief answer, not much of a difference, honestly, right? Because Dharma Shastras, Dharma Sutras, Manusmriti, whatever the scenario is, the basic content of all of these books are to lay out certain rules, regulations, or norms that the society has to follow, right? So, no, again, like we only have Dharma Sutras and Dharma Shastras, right? So, Manusmriti is not another category per se, but Manusmriti is the name of one of the Dharma Shastras, right? So, we only have two categories here, Dharma Shastras, Dharma Sutras. Manusmriti comes under one of them. Manusmriti is the particular name of a book, but these are broader categories, right? And honestly, not much difference. The content is the same. Yeah, I am hoping that partly answers your question, who's ever asked this. Okay, again, just to reiterate the timings of the class starts at 6 p.m., not at 7. Yeah, so just make note of that, guys. Okay, I'm hoping some parts of it are clear, at least, Namit. We'll talk about it in much detail in Friday's class if it's possible. Yeah, like come up with like proper, certain, specific questions if you have any. Then I'll be able to like guide you properly. Yeah, take note of that, Namit. And yeah, okay. No problem, UPSC lover. That's my basic job to answer your questions. So cool. I'll just any questions, just come back. Yeah, I'll answer them. Okay then, we've already like passed time by 25 minutes. It's time to like wind up the class, guys. Thank you so much once again for tuning in. I wish every one of you a very happy and safe Diwali. Yeah, stay safe, have fun, but like come back to the class on Friday. Yeah, I'll see you guys soon. Take care.